Association represents hotels and lodging, and we have virtually every major brand that is a member of our association, along with the owners and franchisees of that brand, and then any organization that is part of what we would call lodging and hotels. So many suppliers, great partners like Cvent and folks like that. Pretty much, if you touch lodging and hotels, you are eligible to be a member for AHLA, and we're thankful that most are. So that's kind of what we've been doing for the last century, over 100 years. And up until about 3 weeks ago, our focus was the typical focus of most member organizations. We advocate on behalf of our industry at the federal, state, and local level. And then on our foundation side, the AHLA Foundation, we work almost specifically on workforce issues. And recently we added to that portfolio the issue of preventing and eliminating human trafficking. So those are the things we do broadly as an association. Of course, if you go back for the first 100 years up until about 3 weeks ago, now all of our focus is on how do we deal with the impacts of this virus, how do we keep the industry alive, and we know at some point lodging, hospitality in general will bounce back. There's no question about that. What will it look like at that point? Well, that's going to be determined by what we've been doing the last few weeks and what we do the next few weeks. How much of this industry can we save? Because we're really in that position where there are a lot of businesses that are going out of business and they won't return. And we need to do our best to make sure that that is prevented in the best possible way.
Thank you, sir. Cecil, sir, I know that we've had this question posed to you before in the past couple of weeks. And again, I don't mean to be repetitive about it, but it's always good to keep, for those that may not have heard of you from before, speak to it again as to the directive and purpose of what AAHOA has been currently doing.
Well, thank you, Lauren. It's great to be with you and Bob and Chip at this most critical time for our industry. I joined AAHOA just a little over 4 months ago. And obviously, when I walked in the door, I had no clue that in just really a couple of short months, we would be facing such an enormous crisis for our industry. But I'm very proud of AAHOA because we have nearly 20,000 members, and all of them are hotel owners. That's essentially the key for AAHOA. They're in every community, literally across the United States of America. Many of them are first, second, third generation Americans. They live the American dream. They've been creating successful businesses, creating jobs, employing people, and having a dramatic impact upon the economies of their local communities. What we do at AAHOA is we try to be the voice for those hotel owners. We do it through the educational offerings that we do, a very unique part of AAHOA. We do great work in doing webinars. I would just simply say in the last 9 days, we've created 15 new webinars that address directly various aspects related to the crisis we're all dealing with. Just those webinars alone, we've seen almost 3,000 people already download them or take advantage of them. And we know that number is going to continue. We also do advocacy with the brands on behalf of our members. Obviously, most of our members, not all, because we do represent independent hoteliers as well, but many of our members are franchisees of every brand that we could sit here and name. And so we do advocacy collectively or communally for the needs that they are facing to make sure there's good communication between our members and the brand CEOs. And so that has been something we've been involved in over the last several weeks. I know just this week alone, I've contacted personally every brand CEO to, one, tell them we're thinking about them. They're going through a tough time as well, but to also talk about ways that we can together survive through this crisis and have the best potential to come out on the other side as viable businesses. Then the other thing we do is our advocacy in Washington. We have a great team there. They've been very engaged as the CARE Act has moved through the process. And we partner with a lot of great organizations like AHLA, U.S. Travel, the Franchise Association, Chamber of Commerce, and many, many others to make sure that we, again, are the voice of America's hotel owners as this kind of legislation is considered. So it's a great organization. It's 30 years old.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Gilbert, sir, about HSMAI.
Sure. Quickly, first of all, congratulations to both the HLA and AAHOA for some great advocacy work that's been done this week on behalf of the hotel industry. That's what trade associations do. Both those organizations do it really well. HSMAI is a little bit different. We're an individual member professional society, so we don't advocate on legislative issues. We exist primarily to educate sales, marketing, and revenue management professionals in the lodging industry globally. Like HLA, we've been around almost 100 years. I haven't been there that long, obviously, but our mission simply is to help hotels grow their revenue through sales, marketing, and revenue optimization. So we do that through a variety of things, but bringing those stakeholders together through education, certification programs, strategy conferences, executive roundtables, and so forth. So like has already been said, we've seen some phenomenal changes in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I think we're all having conversations none of us thought we'd be talking about 3 weeks ago. Everybody knew a black swan event certainly could happen for the hotel industry, but things have been chugging along quite well, particularly here in the U.S. for a number of years now. And now everybody's putting their contingency plans, what they thought were good contingency plans in place. But as we're learning, there's no playbook for the level of occupancy declines that we've seen here in the U.S. and around the world. So glad to be here, Lauren.
No, thank you. And then I don't know if you've all been on the same show together at any time before, but it's certainly a privilege to have all three of you on ours with it at this time, especially. I want to give thanks to my co-hosts who I've asked to stay into the peanut gallery chat room wings for right now, in the sense that we didn't have too many talking heads on the show today, obviously. But I do want to give credit to some of the questions that they have brought up to see if you to be asked. And to this one comes for all the three of you, and Bob will probably go just in reverse order, just be polite about this. This comes from Valen Perini from NOR1. In an optimistic mode, I know we have to focus on the here now and what we have to still go through, but from an optimistic mode, when we move into this recovery mode, are the organizations, all your organizations concerning the hotel industry, will rely actually heavily on third-party providers for inventory distribution as they did back in the 9/11/2009 days? And if so, what are your organizations doing to help maintain a healthy balance between direct and indirect bookings? And Bob, I know that they're different in perspective for all of us, so I'd like to ask you first that question.
Well, it's a great question. I'm not surprised it's coming from Valen because it's a complicated question and there's no easy way to answer it. But I do think the landscape is very different than it was after 9/11, both in terms of the dramatic decline in occupancy, but also in terms of the state of the OTOs. Certainly, they had matured very differently in their landscape than they were back in 2001 and 2002. The hotel industry clearly is looking to to identify new ways to get business, but the hotel industry has really strengthened since then in terms of how they've leveraged loyalty programs to really be able to book more business direct. And that really is critical for them. So I think that's one big advantage the hotel industry has on their side now, is they have the databases and they have the platforms and they have the mobile apps and the ability to communicate directly with a group of users that they know are their high value users and typically high frequency users for travel. So I think certainly the recovery and the distribution channels they use or become dependent upon will be different. I think the unknown is typically any economic shift like this also brings some new entrants into the market. We don't really know who those will be or who they are yet. The landscape today, another difference from 2001, 2002 is the maturity of the shared home concept. It's very, very different. So there's a lot of different product out there too than there was 15 years ago. So different landscape on all fronts. I think the distribution battles will still be there, but those that are doing the marketing really well are going to be able to drive the volume they want during the recovery through the distribution channels that they prefer.
Cecil, what are your thoughts?
Well, in recent days, we reached out to the major OTAs. I'll just speak to that specifically. I mean, obviously, they have become very important for independent hoteliers. Sometimes they're a little bit of a bane to the existence of the hotels who are franchisees of the brands. I would say to you, in our conversations, their business has essentially gone away in a matter of days. They're not getting a lot of reservations right now, as you might imagine. A lot of cancellations have been the issue, and that creates a lot of sometimes extraordinary issues or challenges for the hotelier, the local franchisee or independent hotelier. So I am interested in how this may impact their business model going forward, just as they came on the scene in some respects after a period of crisis. As we move out of this one, will they have the same role as they attempt to pick up the pieces? I think that remains to be seen. But for the moment, we are interested in helping our members in their relationships with them, both in terms of advocacy around the level of fees that are charged, but also just dealing with the complexities right now of this changing landscape where there are very few reservations coming in and mostly cancellations, which has its own unique challenges.
Certainly. Chip, sir, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the landscape has changed dramatically from when they entered into the market some time ago, when it was really, let's be honest, our industry didn't really know how. I mean, they hit on a niche that we hadn't really capitalized on. Since that time, the brand loyalty and the rewards programs have grown in a way that none of us probably could have predicted. And I think to highlight the importance of those, what you've seen in recent days are most of the major brands extending their status for their loyal customers for another full year, because they understand that right now no one's traveling. People are concerned that they may lose that status, and that is critical because what most travelers are now beginning to recognize is that the price matching is out there. You're going to get the same price if you go to brand.com as opposed to going through an OTA, but you also get your points with that brand, and you may get other special benefits that brand is offering. So that status is critically important. And the fact that the brands almost immediately came out and said, look, we're going to extend your status for another considerable period of time is something that I think highlights just how important it is to the brands. And they understand that when we come out of this, those trusted business travelers are going to want to have access to all the amenities they had before we went into this problem.
True. From those who know Mr. Robert Cole with Wachita, one of our co-hosts, he has a dry sense of humor. And in his newsletter that he sends out, he made the comment, he says, who would have thought if somebody walked up to you 30 days ago and said that Expedia was going to be running an ad that Captain Obvious was discouraging you from travel, would you actually believe that was a reality? And it's so true. I mean, brilliant on their part for it, but that's the time that we're in for this. This question comes from Mr. Tim Peter from Tim Peter Associates. Again, brilliant man, also one of our co-hosts. Are there any concerns about long-term impacts on groups and meetings past the near term? And as it refers to this, as some data suggests social distancing will remain the norm for longer periods than the shorter-term effects begin to wind down. What do you think hotels more dependent on that business do now to be ready if meetings and groups face a longer recovery? I know that sounds like a very long-winded question. My apologies. I was reading it more state by state for that. Chip, do you want to try to tackle that one? As to what do you think? How's the group landscape, compared to what we're facing now and the residual effect of literally our social norms changing? I'm going to want to stay farther away from you for the uncertainty of this continuation of problems and so forth. Does that change our group landscape, and how should we adapt to that? I guess it's probably a short abbreviation to that.
Yeah, I believe it will, particularly here in the next 6 to 9 months, most likely. But the reality is these group meetings, these conferences and conventions provide enormous value. So I don't think we're ever going to get away from that. As good as this technology is that we're experiencing right now, it still doesn't compare to a face-to-face meeting. And we saw that after 9/11. If you remember, so many people began, I know technology was much different back then, so many people began saying, hey, let's get away from travel. We can just do these conference calls, these video conference calls. We saw that again, of course, after the Great Recession, where the technology was even much better. And yet still meetings, conventions bounce back, and they bounce back stronger than ever. There's an enormous value in those. Face-to-face meetings aren't going to go away. Social distancing will be with us for some time. But the reality is once we get to the point where this is treated just like the flu, because there's a vaccine, there are remedies for it. If in fact you do get the virus, then I think people will behave as if it is the flu. Now, in our industry, what we're going to see though is first and foremost the leisure will come back because there's enormous pent-up demand. There's a lot of families right now that are saying, "Wow, I wish I could be on vacation. I wish I could be on spring break. I'm looking forward to summer vacation." That's going to happen. The second part of that is business travel in general will come back because we know that those face-to-face meetings is typically what seals the deal, and people aren't going to be willing to give that up. But the third part that you reference here, the large meetings and conferences, that'll be the last part to come back. But I believe it will eventually come back because there's value in doing so.
Very much so.
If I may jump in on that, we had one of our virtual roundtables yesterday for the chief sales officers, and we had 16 major brands represented on that call. And so one of the questions we specifically asked was, what are some of the positive trends you are seeing in the last 14 days? Because certainly we know there's been lots of negative trends out there. But I think the group overall was encouraged. One of the questions we asked them is specific, what are your customers telling you today? And it was interesting that they talked about things like leads are still coming in. They saw rebooking starting as early in the summer. Quarter three and Q4 really have not been impacted yet from a group perspective. There's a lot of clients still willing to sign 2021 contracts. So there's still a lot of activity going out there for future periods. I think the big unknown or certainly the big hole is still going to be Q2 for most of the hotel industry, that in terms of the group market, in all markets actually in Q2. But group activity in the future appears to still be on pace. And one CSO made the comment that there came across a number of customers still were booking in future years just to support the hotel community. So business is still out there, at least if we can gauge anything from what customers of large group meetings are telling the hotel industry right now. It's that we have every intention of rebooking a lot of this business, and we're going to keep coming. And if anything, that may create some positive pressure on the hotel industry in Q3 and Q4 if they come back at the pace which they intend to at this point in time. Still a lot of unknowns out there, but at least some positive sentiments in terms of what customers are telling our key brand sales executives right now.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren, I have to say this question is near and dear to my heart. I think I agree with what both Chip and Bob have said. There is fear out there, and who knows how long it will take for some of that to lessen. But obviously, AAHOA this year made the decision, a very difficult decision, to postpone our convention and trade show till August. Obviously, we don't know what is going to happen between now and August. But I will tell you just some interesting little anecdotes. I mean, first of all, when we do surveys of our members, one of the things they point out as being most valuable is the networking that they do at our events. AAHOA does a lot of events. Last year, almost 200 events. And for our trade show, which is one of the largest for our industry, it's a place where business literally takes place on the floor. And so it's important to our vendors. Now, as we're looking to August, we've seen some softening. Our registrations have gone down, but not as much as you would think. We still have 4,000 people registered for our convention in August. We still have over 740 booths. People are holding on. Even yesterday, I was talking to James Jenkins in our sales department. Even yesterday, I think they had 6 inquiries from people asking about a booth at the AAHOA convention in August. So that gives me the feeling that there is still hope out there. There is still anticipation we will get to the other side of this. And obviously, that's a very specific situation for AAHOA. But I'm hopeful that people will come back quicker than hopefully we fear because of that dimension of interaction, human interaction and networking, which is so important, particularly in our industry and for so many others. And we provide the the means for that to take place. So I'm actually hopeful. I agree. It's probably going to be down for a while. Is it 6 months, 9 months? I suppose it depends upon how much longer this goes on. But I'm hopeful, and we certainly hope we're going to get our convention in August.
Certainly. If I may interject with this, I think from promoting this show yesterday, Kat brought out a very good point. Kat Muhammad, one of your director of education for AAHOA, actually, she joined me on a live LinkedIn webinar, LinkedIn yesterday to talk about the fact that we're having this conversation today. And one of the things we said now, so more than ever, is a reaffirmation of the very value foundations that each of the associations represent. You know, if there was ever a question of why you should be a member of something, why you should participate in an aggregation of similarity, now is more so the definition point than ever, because this is where you receive your best information. This is where you receive your solidarity. This is where you receive your how to move forward conversations, rather than, you see all these things popping up in media right now, a lot of white noise. We joke about it. It's like everybody's turned in from a real estate mogul to a coronavirus professional. So there's a lot of white noise out there. You all represent the solidarity and the singularity of seeing it from the perspective of the industry. And so now more than ever, this is the time to reaffirm their memberships and connections to you all for whatever purpose motivations they have for it. So to that end, that going to the conference aspect of it, that creation of combinations, that ability to communicate is now more profoundly valuable than ever, or reaffirmationally so in that sense. So to that end, thank you, gentlemen, for that. One other question came also from from Robert Cole, and this was in relationship to going a little bit to what you said, Chip, as to where you see the progression of growth from segments of our industry, and you're saying conferencing was last to it. From the emergence of all this, how do you see the segmentation emerging? And I know we're far from the myopic of at the end as to whether the reality of it or not, but how do you see the progression of us coming from this? I mean, and that probably gets twisted to the fact that we do have the stimulus bill in place, that you all have been such a key element to the success of that. But how do you see all this forming in the forward? If you were to see it from just this current perspective, of course, that's just in the mind's eye, but how do you see us coming from this? Who begins to walk out of the cave first and look for the light?
Well, I think if we look at this like a three-legged stool, and you start with leisure travel, and then general business travel, and then meetings, events, and conferences. It'll go in that order. The question is, though, when, and Cecil pointed that out a moment ago, how long does this last? Because it's not when the virus goes away, because the virus will probably be with us forever in some form. It's when the fear goes away. And so when do we as a nation say, all right, we're no longer fearful of travel? And I think what you're going to see, it depends on when that happens. But if it happens in, say, the next 6 to 8 weeks, as you can see my dog walking behind me now, if it happens in the next 6 to 8 weeks, then people are going to continue on with their summer travel plans, which I think is the hope of a lot of families right now. They're all cooped up in the house together. They want to get out and take those vacations. If this were to extend beyond that and extend closer to the school year, you may not see that leisure traveler as much, because folks got to get back to work. So I think it's really a timing of when we get past the fear. But I expect most likely it's going to be leisure travel first this summer. Sports will start happening again. I think that's one of the strangest things for those of us that are sports fans. There's no sport. Like, there's always a season for sports, we often overlap, but there's literally no sports at all. So when those Major League Baseball starts back up, we'll see what happens with the NBA and NHL playoffs, and of course the NFL and college football will start in late summer. That will dictate a lot of it as well.
Gentlemen, any other additions to that?
I would just add quickly. I mean, I think probably many of your viewers saw the stats put out this week by the Global Business Travel Association, which were pretty gloomy about the corporate travel forecast. But historically, that's also been one of the quickest ones to rebound. People have to get back to doing business. Chip said this earlier when he's talking about the value of face-to-face meetings. People need to do business. And for major corporations, they need to talk to their customers. They need to get their people on the planes to go talk to clients and prospective customers. And there will be a pent-up demand for that. I think we'll see. The big question will be when. But when business comes back, it should come back pretty quick, the corporate side.
And general question for all three again, if I may, is, as we have all this penned up and this uncertainty going forward to this, from the association's perspective that each of you represent, how do you see each of your associations educating your memberships as to not nosediving into rates, not just trying to get any business for business, just you have that educated approach to the market as we enter back in here, because it's going to be like a Le Mans race, I imagine. Some cars are going to be out of gas, some people don't have drivers, and other cars aren't running. You know, it's going to be kind of a mess when everybody starts jumping into this. What education processes do each of you see addressing in this modality so that everyone takes a measured means of getting into this logically without us turning into, you know, $25 room rates and 50-cent bus rides or something? Sorry for the analogies, but anyway, whoever would like to be first, but please go ahead.
We certainly, as I mentioned earlier, created webinars very quickly. We're holding 1, 2, sometimes 3 per day. Right now, however, I would say most of them are focused on really how are you dealing with the crisis. And it's gone from what we did very early on, and that is, what should your standards be for cleaning? What do you need to do at the front desk? How do you protect your employees? What do you do if you have a guest that comes down with COVID-19? Very practical kinds of things. But we've moved now, as you might expect, for hoteliers to really help them think, how am I going to negotiate with my brand with respect to fees and things like that, or OTAs, or how even very practically to deal with what's going on in every community around the country. I mean, this week alone, I think we have dealt with 15 different states where governors issued emergency orders, which if we had not gotten into the process, could very well have excluded hotels from being essential operations and essential businesses. So we're in there trying to just literally help some of our hoteliers keep the doors open during this time. For some of them, it's how do you deal with banks? If you've got to go in and talk to your lender about getting forbearance of some kind, whether it's a longer amortization or whether it's interest only or deferral of payments for a period of several months, those are the kinds of things we've been helping hoteliers with as they literally deal with this huge liquidity problem that this crisis has brought to them through no fault of their own. And then, of course, within the last several days, we've shifted gears. We've held 21 regional town hall meetings, virtual town hall meetings over the last 2 days between our officers and regional directors and members across the country, involving thousands of people, just to let them know about the CARES Act and what is in there and what they need to be prepared for once it goes through rules and regulations, assuming we get it passed through the House today and President Trump signs it, or tomorrow at the latest. What are they going to do once the rules and regs hit? We're doing webinars this coming week to help them with that process as well. So it's a very different thing right now in terms of the kinds of educational offerings that we're trying to bring to our members. And I think we'll continue to do that for the foreseeable future.
Gentlemen?
Well, I think, Lauren, you know, our swim lane has really been very different from Cecil's because we're different organizations, but our focus has really been on how do we prepare the sales, marketing, and revenue management folks for the recovery, and what should they be doing now, and how do they really prepare for the recovery in a way that will really help them accelerate as quickly as possible. So that's really where our focus has been. From a sales perspective, people are still busy. They are still talking to clients, they're talking to customers. They're going to be in the front line of when those different market segments we talked about start rebounding. Marketing has changed. Certainly some marketing has been suspended and new marketing messages are being created. You referenced the one by Expedia. You may have seen earlier in the week, Las Vegas came out with some new campaigns talking about the destination. That's what marketing people have to do. You've got to, reimagine what is the message going to be once we come out on the other side. And then from a revenue optimization standpoint, distribution channels still have to be managed day in and day out to make sure you know where that content and those rates and that inventory is being distributed. And that's where every company needs to make what's the right independent strategy about what are they going to do from pricing. As you alluded to earlier, historically, history has proven that dropping rate does not increase demand. And that was one of the webinars we had a week or so ago, reminding people that, here's what we've learned from history. Let's not repeat the fact that we want to certainly start the spiral to the bottom of the market. That doesn't help anybody. If anything, it only inhibits your ability to recover quickly when people start making those types of decisions. So those are the things we're pushing out to our members on a regular basis now. And as I alluded to earlier, we're doing a series of virtual executive roundtables. Earlier this week, we talked to all the chief revenue officers of all the brands. Wednesday, we had about 40 hotel management companies with their chief revenue officers. Yesterday, we had the chief sales officers on the line, and Tuesday, we'll have the chief marketing officers. And next week, we've got chief digital officers, and Friday, the chief loyalty officers. So all of the groups that normally meet face-to-face for us annually, we're at least now accelerating one or more virtual communities where they can connect and talk to each other about the current state of things. And we'll continue to develop content and webinars and more programming based on what those insights tell us.
Excellent. Chip, any additional to that?
Yeah, look, I think Cecil referenced it a moment ago. The education we're focused on right now is frankly survival for owners and survival for the industry. Hopefully that'll pass soon. But if you ask people what's on their mind right now, they're not really thinking about what's happening in 3, 6, 9 months. They're really trying to figure out, how do I make payroll? How do I make my payments on my debt? How do I stay in business? And so that's where all of our education is focused at this point in time. There will be a rush, as you mentioned, at some point. One of the ideas that I had that hopefully we can get others to join on to is I would love for the president to declare a national travel month. I would love for it to be as early as July, where everyone gets out and travels. If you could convince local lawmakers to be part of this, if you could almost call it like a tax-free holiday so that you waived all occupancy taxes, you waived airline taxes, you waived sales taxes on restaurants, and you declare 1 month tax-free to travel, you would see an enormous jump back into the marketplace because we see that in other areas. I mean, most of you, wherever you live, you see these back-to-school sales where they waive the sales tax and everybody goes out on one weekend and spends a ton of money. We'd like to see that for an entire month. But first and foremost is survival. And once we get past that, then we've really got to have the America is open for travel again message spread loudly.
Excellent. Gentlemen, I want to be mindful of your time, and I want to take also this opportunity to thank all of you for your persistent support of the human trafficking issue and so forth. In mind, given even the current circumstances, everyone's focus on not letting that topic go away, and the initiatives that all of you have done for that have been remarkable, and we will always mention that on the show every time that we have the opportunity to. And thank you very much for all of that. For that, and I also want to make an open. There was plenty of other questions, and as you can see from some of the chats, and I apologize for everyone that we weren't really taking questions to offer everyone today because literally there would be too many to ask, and we'd occupy your entire day trying to get these through. So we thank you very much for everyone that has offered them, and we'll offer them to everyone as well as if you feel inclined to go over and get back to any of them, or we'll address them in conversations afterwards. But is there any closing aspects that you would like to make sure we talk to? We didn't really talk about the stimulus package in as much in detail. We didn't talk about ramifications. We didn't talk about bad numbers or anything like this. I think I'm so thankful that we went the direction we did and had the opportunity to talk about your optimism and your perspectives. Is there anything that we missed that you don't want to make sure we missed? Is there some aspect that you want to make sure gets messaged out? And Cecil, we can start with you if you like, sir, and then we go around to the rest, and then we can wrap up any closing things you might say.
Well, I just want to make sure everyone is aware of the tremendous number of resources that are available at AAHOA.com. And I'm very proud we have moved those resources to the front of the paywall. So even if you're not a member of AAHOA, we hope you'll decide to become a member after the fact. But even if you're not a member today, visit the website and take a look at those webinars. They are recorded. You can download them and watch them at your leisure. All of the resources that we have, a lot of one-pagers, some information about the webinars that will be coming up next week, including webinars specifically devoted to the CARES Act and what that is going to mean and what hoteliers should do. Enormous amount of resource there, and it's continuously updated on a daily basis. You can sign up for our daily update, which we're sending out to probably 25,000 people a day. It's really a great resource, and we invite you to take advantage of it because that's absolutely what it's there for. But thank you, Lauren, for letting us be on and talk about all the issues. We appreciate your outreach and our partnership with you. And, as we like to say, we're going to get through this. It will end. But the only way to get through it is to stay strong together, and we'll get through it together. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Chip, sir.
Yeah, the unification that the industry's seen over the last 3 weeks is like something that I've never seen before. Everyone typically is out doing their own thing, and that's wonderful and it works. But when we needed a unified voice, everybody came together. The reality is we're still in the middle of this process. Yes, the CARES Act, I assume it's passed the House now or is about to pass the House. But again, that is just an economic stabilization act. That is not an economic stimulus package. There will be more legislation. And the only way to make sure that our industries are protected in that legislative process is for us to remain united. We have something on our website called Hotels Act. It has generated over 100,000 letters to Congress in the last 3 weeks. It's absolutely free, and it's the opportunity for the entire industry to get together to make sure that when an issue arises, and we need instant emphasis on messaging to Congress, that everyone can do so in a unified way and an effective way. And so we certainly hope everyone will go to the website and sign up for Hotels Act. But the more important message is that, yes, as Cecil mentioned, this will pass. But once it does pass, let's not let this unity pass with it. Let's make sure that as an industry, we are staying together because there will be other challenges, hopefully not as big as this, but there will be other challenges. And we've seen in the last 3 weeks what staying together can do in meeting those challenges.
Excellent statement. Thank you, sir. Mr. Gilbert.
Yeah, just to wrap up real quick, I think we mentioned this before, but I think all of us have great resource centers on our respective websites, as we do at hsmai.org. Ours, of course, is focused on what sales, marketing, and revenue management folks should be doing now. But I think as difficult as the past few weeks have been for everybody at some level of their life or their job, know that this industry of hospitality and travel is resilient. And globally, there's still are already studies out there. We know people want to continue to travel. That people will do that from a business perspective, from a leisure perspective, the meetings and conventions. So it will come back. We just have to weather the storm right now and take confidence in knowing exactly that recovery will be there. We don't know when yet.
Very good. Thank you very much. And all of your resource tools, I know that I've talked to everyone representative of your individual associations, are aggregating those for us. So, of course, will be on the show notes for the show, this show, and also all the show notes, everything will be distributed to all of you, all your associations as well, for any usage that could be helpful and what have you for it. As Bob and Cecil already know, but Chip, you are always, whenever you would like and feel that this is about any helpful or anything like that, you're more than welcome to come to the show at any time. It is at all of your gentlemen's disposal if the voice can help yours in this process and beyond, whatever. I just said we've been here for 6.5 years doing this, so we appreciate it if you think that can be helpful for all of you all. You can stay as long as you would like, gentlemen. I know that we only asked for your first half hour. We continue on and conversate, and you'll have a lot of other co-hosts pop on and want to break down some of the conversations and so forth. We always have topics and all, but again, if you want to leave, you can just simply hit the close your tab button. I think that's the easiest way to do it. But Mr. Gilbert, if people want to go over again, just as a reiterate, we'll go through it. The website name again is
hsmai.org.
And Cecil for AAHOA.
AAHOA, AHOA.com.
And Chip?
AHLA.com. And unfortunately, I don't want to leave, but I've got to leave. But thanks for having me.
Yeah. Chip, it's been a pleasure. Thank you all for being on the show today. A privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now. And it's just me on the screen. Yay, Tim. Thank you, my co-host, for sitting in the wings, for letting them be the talking heads.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Sincerely appreciate that. That was interesting dialogue. And I'm sorry I didn't get to everyone's questions. Hey, Steph. Hey, Valen.
Hey, Stephanie. Hey, Valen. How are you?
I got to some of you all's questions.
Valen, I loved your questions. I thought they were great.
Stuart growing a beard.
Stuart.
Well, I don't know. I don't think that's really what you can call it.
Okay, well, it's a shadow.
I'm not shaving to see what happens, but I would not call it a beard at this point.
Hey, Kat, thank you for putting up those links. I am going to aggregate all the links. I have them on the list. I was going to put them up as a screen, and I'm like, I'll just put them up in the show notes, and we'll share that later. I think we can take the show and take the first half and slice it and put the links with it, and then have that as its own content. So.
I may have missed my moment, but Stuart, I'm not shaving my head to see what happens, and unfortunately, this is as good as it gets. So,
well, it's about like my beard, to be honest.
So I've been the one that had the privilege of talking for a while, so I'll leave it to you all to talk a little bit. What mean, again, I didn't get everyone's questions, and I think some of the questions, and Lily, I appreciate the ones you gave me. I wanted to steer away from the "what do you think the future is like" conversation a little bit, because I don't think any of them would have really answered directly towards that, because I don't think there's no answer to it right now.
Right. I thought one of the best answers, and first of all, I thought it was a great discussion. Well done, Lauren, in terms of moderating the discussion. Good answers, a lot of good information there. I thought one of the best things that anyone said was when William said that that travel will come back when fear goes down. I'm paraphrasing because I can't get his quote exactly right, but basically that the business will come back once people aren't afraid to travel. And I think that's obviously, we're not there yet. We're going to be a ways before we get there, unfortunately. But I think that's exactly right, that once people feel comfortable, they can travel without risk to themselves, their family, their loved ones, etc. And, that's a day we're all looking forward to, obviously.
Yeah, but there's a second part to that, which is when they also have the money to travel, right?
Well, sure.
So, I mean, the 3 million people applying for unemployment this week, it's twofold, right? So they have to be afraid that they won't get sick, but they also have to know they've got enough cash.
Right. No, that's a great point.
So it's going to be, it's my guess is that the fear will recede before there's enough disposable income to pay for it.
Yeah, and I would reiterate that too. I think there was a lot of optimism, which is great, right? We need a lot of positivity now, and they talked about how groups will come back quickly, slower than leisure, obviously, but business travel will also come back as people need to be face to face. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I think the reality we're going to deal with is businesses and individuals, because they are strapped for cash, are going to be a little more mindful, and that extra trip may be cut now. So I think we're going to see it come back, but it's going to take time, probably years, to get back to the level we were at prior to this.
So one of the things that we found to be true in the last two downturns, and I suspect will be true now, is luxury tends to be a leading indicator when things start to get better. Because, Valen, you're exactly right. I mean, disposable income becomes a problem, but in the luxury market, disposable income pretty much is never a problem, right? So, that will be the green shoots. Now, obviously, for some hotels, that's not a customer that they attract and the like, but at least it's something to look for to see if the luxury properties in your market start to do better at a certain point. That's an indicator that, we're starting to get on the other side of this from a challenge perspective, at least to some degree.
Yeah. And is that our executive producer with you?
Yes.
Hi. Oh, hi. Oh, hello, sweetie. How are you?
Breakfast time for young people. Question for you all. I know quite a few of you are called upon by the industry as subject matter experts for conventions and conferences. We still have our conference on the books for August. Do you all still have speaking, or those that have been asked, do you still have existing speaking opportunities suggesting that those conferences are taking place?
Yeah.
Later in the year, yes.
Yeah. It's probably August is the earliest for sure, but yeah.
Because I don't think the data conference has shifted out of August, has it? Out of Nashville?
No, because we have Dwayne Vincent speaking or offering a chia at our convention, and he mentioned it's at the tail end of our conference, actually.
Yeah, I think it's. Sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
No, go ahead, Tim. Go, please.
I was going to say, I don't know about everybody else, but my conference speaking peak always seems to be February, March, April, May, and then September, October, November. So the summer's always slow anyway, but it does seem like September, October, November, everything is still on the books. Everything through May has either been moved to the fall, been canceled outright, or been converted to a virtual opportunity.
Yeah, or through June, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say at least mid-June.
Yeah, I had nothing on the books in June, so I can't speak to that personally. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Roberts said he had something else to do. He gave us some great stuff for it, but I mean, those questions that we didn't get to ask them.
Hey, there was one question, Lauren, that you really should have asked, right? Because they all dressed up fancy for the video conference, but you should have asked them all to stand up to see if they were wearing pants.
So, did you see that there was an EVP of merchandising from Walmart on CNBC yesterday? And this is an actual data point. I laughed heartily at this. I'm not going to lie. that they have seen a significant increase in sales of tops, but a big decline in sales of bottoms. We basically live in the waist up economy right now.
Camera ready means shirts and background. How many searches might go for backgrounds now? Like how to put a background or green screen behind you or something.
Yep. And I may or may not be wearing Adidas track pants right now.
I was thinking you could ask all of us.
Yeah, no.
Well, Tim, you got me beat because I'm not wearing any pants. And I'm not going
to ask him to stand up at
Too
all.
much information, right?
I know we didn't ask them about some of the things that Robert was trying to point to individually with them because I wanted to keep them all engaged. I didn't want to go singularity out on it. And I think, Tim, that was your recommendation. Or Rob, I forget, but it was, keep it cohesive. But some of the things were some of the details about the stimulus package. And I know that Robert's pretty much been on the forefront from our social postings or in our little social group that he's been doing. But any insights from anyone as to what they're seeing is coming out of the package in detail? Any details that are striking or standing out that were surprises?
So, the one thing I will say is I thought AAHOA had sent out a terrific, inside the CARES Act summary. That's an 880-page document. I know at least one of our cohort has spent the time to actually read the whole thing. I would be lying if I said I was that individual. But I thought AAHOA did a really, really nice summary. And anybody who needs a copy of that should definitely check out on AAHOA's website because there's a very, very good summary about, how it affects the hotel industry, what you can do, some really good insights into the key parts. I apologize. I forget who said this of the folks from the associations on the earlier part, but one of the things Stuart and I talked about on the Fuel podcast a week ago was talk to your banks. Obviously, I don't mean to be morose about this. I don't mean to make a really dark joke, but if there's one thing that your local lenders want to own less than a hotel in the market, it is owning all the hotels in the market. So banks have been extraordinarily flexible, and now with the CARES Act, they've got some flexibility in terms of things they can do to work with you to ensure that they can go to interest only, or you can defer payments or things like that to kind of work through whatever downturn is going to be. And I thought that point about talk to your lenders and understand how this act influences what your lenders are able to do for you is really because this all goes through approved SBA lenders, which I only know because I read the AAHOA update, is a great way to approach this. So I would strongly recommend checking that out.
Yeah, and if you've already spoken with your bank and you're dealing with a national chain and you're not getting the flexibility you need, I know local banks have really stepped up in a lot of the markets I deal with. So, maybe this is time to look at who you're dealing with from a banking perspective, because there is a lot of opportunity and flexibility right now to defer payments and eliminate that cash flow crunch, which is really what's creating the panic and forcing people to do irrational things like cut all of their marketing, which is crazy right now to do that.
Yeah, it's really just very short-sighted, but I think it'll also be very interesting because from what I understand in the stimulus package, a lot of the funding that's coming through the SBA loans will be forgiven if you maintain a certain level of staffing. So before everybody panics who's already closed their hotels and laid off their employees, you have the option to rehire those employees, and there's a little bit of time, before all of this goes through. But from what I understand, I was on a webinar with a CPA firm earlier today that clarified a lot of things. It sounds like they're going to use your staffing levels, your average staffing levels from 2019 as the basis for that. And then the amounts of the loans are going to be predicated on your average salary amounts from January through February, as I understand it. So for those listening who may have already done layoffs or are looking at doing layoffs, you won't necessarily be penalized as long as you rehire those staff members. And then a lot of the loans will be forgiven as more of a grant at the end of whatever period of time, which is still a little undefined.
I don't want to be longer, like, oh, I heard this or heard that or something. But in one dialogue I was with, somebody was proposing the fact that the money's bailout for the airlines is with the strings attached associated with it. They have to bring all of their previous routes back online at once. They can't trickle it like they did last time. Has that been okay, I'm not going to cut farther on until it for certain on it, because when I was in, I'm sitting there going, well, that's really smart if that's the case, because that means we can actually get a lot of people traveling because rates will be low and so forth. But if it's not substantiated, I'm going to keep it going in conversation, because
yeah, I mean, but if that is true, that guarantees the airlines will lose money. So
right.
I mean, I would have a really hard time if that's true, I would say that I would have a really hard time understanding the justification behind that. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you force the airlines to lose money?
Right, because demand is not going to come back.
That's right.
All on the same day, right?
Demand is going to. That would be like saying to Marriott, you have to open up every single one of your hotels
and every room,
May 1st, every floor, every room, full staffing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
not that Congress couldn't be short-sighted on these things, but
yeah. Well, we'll bring up one article that Robert did give us out of his very well curated list every week. For those who aren't aware of it, if you're there's a list that Robert Cole sends out to us that we use as kind of a benchmark. Sometimes we get to it, sometimes we don't, for the show, and that is it's at bit.ly/rockcheetah. You can sign up to get it free each week, just like we do. But one article he brought up was the owner of the Dallas basketball team. Where is he?
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban, there he is. How you treat your workers during the pandemic will define your brand for decades. And I think that is a viable point, because right now I'm hearing horror stories, good and worse.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked this one. This is the one I really, it pushed my button in all the right and wrong ways, because I could not agree with him more. And I don't always agree with Mark Cuban. He has some out there kind of opinions sometimes, but I could not agree with him more that this is not a money situation. This is a people situation. And we're in the hospitality industry. Tim said something on our podcast last week, which really has resonated with me, and I've stolen repeatedly and used a lot, which is a lot of people don't get into the hospitality industry for the money, which is probably a good thing, right? Right now, we don't have money to worry about. We got in it for the people. And it's shocking to me to see how many businesses really have shown their true colors in the last few weeks, in terms of vendors who aren't treating their clients the appropriate way, right? Or on the other side, the ones that are doing a really good job with their clients, or hotels and management companies that just knee-jerked and laid everyone off without considering the ramifications, or at least making it as painless as possible. There are simple things that businesses can do right now to make a terrible situation a little bit better. For example, if you lay someone off, if the business submits the unemployment, then they give the people get the money in 3 days instead of 7 days. So there's a lot of people they went straight to the spreadsheets and didn't consider the human ramification, and that is going to have a long-lasting impact. There are going to be vendors, there's going to be hotel management companies that do not survive this, and the ones that don't are the ones that did not put humans first, didn't put their people first, both their employees, their guests, and their partners as well.
Well, and if I can jump on that for 1 second, I love technology as much as anybody. I mean, I do digital marketing for the vast majority of my career. I cannot think of a single example where a piece of technology or an amenity has been a long-term differentiator in this industry ever. You come out with a cool amenity, you come out with a cool technology. Pretty soon, everybody has it. What people remember about your property, what people remember about their experience when they come stay with you, are their interactions with the guests, with the staff, rather, their interactions with the people who work there, the actual spirit of hospitality that they experience. And, when you lay people off and do it in a bad way, and clearly you need to do sometimes what you need to do to make sure you survive. So I don't mean to suggest you need to keep, resources if you cannot afford to pay them. At the same time, how you do that and how you treat those people on the way out the door has an impact not just on those individuals, but on anyone else who stays and can create bad experiences and the like, which then leads to bad experiences for guests. And that I completely agree with this in terms of how it will define your brand for some time to come.
Yeah. And I think also, like, you have to think about not just how you're treating your employees in the short term, because in some cases, for example, in a hotel closure, you may be shutting down your hotel for a couple of months in order to ensure that those people will have a job in a couple of months. If you try to be nice to the extent that you run yourself out of business on a permanent basis, is that really helpful to your employees in the long term? So I think that even with the loan forgiveness and things like that, bringing back your staffing levels, you really have to crunch the numbers and understand what makes your business viable in the long term. Is it taking the loan and being, forgiven of that and just finding something or other for your employees to do? Is it something else that involves, staying shut down for a certain period of time? And that answer is going to be different for everybody, depending on their cash reserves, their daily nut, all of these different things that they need to be really thinking about. So my number one advice, I think, to everybody is don't make emotional decisions. Don't jump to decisions quickly without taking the time to really sit down with a clear head and work out everything that you need in order to make the right decision for yourself and your employees. But absolutely be transparent. When we looked at the fact that we're going to have to lay off some employees, we let them know from the moment we knew that there would be potential layoffs. And we've been working with each person based on their financial situation to do whatever we can to cover them, either with health insurance or things like that. So I think that you really want to do it from the perspective of taking care of your people first, but that may or may not involve keeping them employed. So I just want to be clear about that. You really have to think through all of the ramifications.
You can take care of people without employing them, right? The reality is there are people that have to be let go, and
right.
It sucks. But there's a way to do that with compassion and empathy, with a parachute that enables them to not have more stress on them than they already have. So
absolutely,
it's about treating everyone as an individual person and showing empathy and caring for everyone.
Well, one of the things that I thought was really nice, a property that I work with, a small group that I work with, has a restaurant, and they had to close the restaurant. They were required to close the restaurant by the state. They were, had to close down quite a few rooms, etc. And they made sure that as they were closing the restaurant, they went through the refrigerators and the freezers and actually, passed that out to employees as they were leaving to make sure that they had, a refrigerator full of food for the next week or two,
right.
Things along those lines, and are continuing to collect groceries in the neighborhood for the housekeepers and folks along the, from the local community, for folks who may be impacted by this, who were, lower wage earners and the like.
If I may introduce Ms. Greta Brooks, who is the president and CEO, right, of Sales Boost. I've had the privilege of being on some of her webinars, which as a resource will actually be on our list. The webinars have been phenomenal last week, and I think we're having some coming next week, and I get to play in one of those too. But Greta, hello, hi, welcome, thanks for joining. Oh, no audio, can't hear you. Uh-oh, there's somewhere in there, but all the same.
The sideways for everyone else as well.
What's that? Yeah, she's on the phone. I think she's on the phone. I don't know.
On my screen, she's at a 90-degree angle.
Oh, really?
No, she's right side up front.
Mine's, yeah.
Greta, you're tilted.
She's in portrait mode for me.
Stuart's tilted, so it doesn't really make much difference, I don't think.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll just do this.
Yeah, I think it's
Stuart, what kind of liquid breakfast did you have this morning?
Well, I had to record an episode of the podcast this morning. It's illegal in the fueling world to not drink while you're recording our podcast. So I had to start early.
I don't know why, Greta. You're on mute. Let me see if I can unmute. There, try that now. No, still nothing. No. It's on that side. Yeah, it's on this side. It's not on that. It's not on this side. It's on that side. Your phone, the microphone is not on or something, but it's on this side. Dang it!
Hey, can I cover some late breaking news while Greta's getting her?
Yeah, sure, please do. Please do.
Because I heard you guys when I was coming.
The sound effect, Robert.
Very nicely done, Lauren. But I was listening. You guys were talking about what was, the stimulus plan and things like that. Our friends at Cleveland Research wound up sending out a little note since the show has started. So I'll just read it very quickly. Title I of the bill. So there's not really anything earmarked for hotels the way airlines have it, right? Airlines, it's like $50 billion, and it's pieced out to cargo versus passenger versus contractors and things like that. For hotels, Title I of the bill has the $350 billion of loan forgiveness grants for small businesses. So hotels are basically being treated as small businesses, not as a separate.
Right, they're defining as fewer than 500 employees, correct? Is that
right? Yeah, I have those. There are 54,000 hotels in the U.S. Kat probably can fact check that number for me. 33,000 of which are considered small businesses. Each small business hotel under 500 employees or $35 million on a $35 million in revenue on a per hotel basis can receive 2.5 times the monthly payroll to cover a variety of expenses, which are rent, interest, utilities, etc. These small business loans are grants forgivable. We did have some conversations kind of earlier in our little messenger feed. I believe February 15th is the date for looking at what the pre-crisis staffing levels were, but I'm not exactly sure how the details are.
According to AAHOA's summary that they sent out, they list February 15th it being the retroactive date. So anyone who was furloughed or laid off after February 15th, after February 14th, technically can be rehired and still be eligible.
Okay, yeah, so that's one. And then number two is the famous $500 billion through the Treasury Department, right? The challenge with the $500 billion through the Treasury Department is they still have 10 days to draft what they're going to do with all that, right? So that's going to be interesting, but that is really going to be more in the form of loans. So for the most part, they have to be repaid back. The small business loans are grants that are forgivable, so that's a big plus for those. And so yeah, they can be used. Oh, if these funds are used for just wages payroll, they can be converted to a grant, right? So we'll have to see how that part goes as well. So. Anyway, so that's kind of the pools of money. That's not for the hotel business. You're fighting against a lot of other industries, right? Yeah. So I'm not sure how much there's really going to be to rely on. But I think the number one was those grants for the small businesses. So, but it's capped at $350 billion. So
I think we got Greta's audio back. I'm thinking, Greta, can I say something? Greta. Nope.
We can see the ceiling fan moving.
We can see the ceiling fan move, so we know Greta's there.
Doing really weird things. So
it is kind of weird. Greta, can you say something? See if your audio's working. Somebody's typing. Somebody's typing.
Whoever's typing, mute yourself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Who's typing? Whoever's typing.
Not it.
Hands up.
Stuart.
It's not me. I promise.
Stuart.
And actually, I'm so sorry, I have to drop off. I was hoping to hear a little more of Greta. Hi, Greta. Hope it works out soon.
She's got to be the one typing because it's the only new thing we have.
I don't think that's static. I think that's actually Greta's microphone.
Anyway.
Yeah, nobody can hear me.
I love that.
So, but thank you all. I'm going to drop off. It looks really cool seeing everybody on screen right now.
Yeah.
But have a great show. And hey, if you guys want to find me, check me out at AAHOA.com or email me at cat.m.speaks@gmail.com.
And Kat, thank you for everything, for coordinating this. It was like a job. Thank you very much for that.
I try to bring some superstars.
Hey.
Why not?
As opposed to the direct we normally have.
Oh, but it's appropriate lineup. Oh my gosh, I'm getting blown up. I will see you all later. Have a great weekend.
I know. Thanks, Kat. Greta, I'm so sorry this technology is not working for us to have you join us. It would have been fun to have you jump in on this because like I said, they've been doing some pretty cool webinars too, accurate webinars, good information, good feeding, just not this general fluff and stuff throw out that we're seeing so many people do.
Are you including yourself in that, Lauren?
No, I'm excluding myself. I'm pointing to field travel when I say that. What's this cotton candy stuff they're throwing out?
Oh, there were at least 5 articles. I was really thinking of doing an article shaming at the beginning of the little newsletter, but I chose not to focus on the numbers.
Stuart, I'm taking your link if you don't mind. I'm putting that into the whole note thing about resources and things and stuff. But that applicable to the current conditions and conversations and so forth. So, because really good stuff for that. But Mr. Cole, thank you as always for your list of things. Do you want to think that we should hit the main topic, or do you think the topic has already kind of brought itself into conclusion with the coronavirus sale? Hotels now.
I couldn't listen to I was trying to kind of partially listen, but I had to focus on my other call. So,
all right. Well, most of the.
So I'm not really sure what they talked about, but I think it seemed pretty good.
I'll throw it up.
I heard it was outstanding. The word on the street was it was fantastic.
Considering a week ago, most hotels wrinkled their nose at the very concept, and now all of a sudden, the hotels are going, "Yeah, I can do that."
For the hospital, yeah, that's. Lord, I think Kat's gone. Kat can vouch for us. What was it, a week ago Thursday? What did Lauren and I talk about? We said, "Hey, forget this tricky little marketing things. Why don't you go talk to your local county or city health department and the local hospitals to see how you can help?" Right, and that's where the demand is. So.
Yeah, and it is a reality, because I know from even my clients in like San Antonio, where at first it was like, no, we're just going to shut down, leave it as is, not knowing the durability of this. Now it's like, wait a minute, maybe if I do approach the local government, proximity to the hospital, containment, they need the space. And now that the conversation of possible renovation anyways coming into the conversation, a lot of hotels are really reevaluating the renovation schedules. Where it's like, okay, maybe while this is, why not? Since we don't know how long it's going to be anyway, and nobody's saying no to loans for this right now, because they know there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So now what you thought you weren't going to do might be the time to do it. So some hotels are looking at say, okay, so we'll be a coronavirus support area for a while, and then when that gets cleared and everything else, we just go into reno and clear it up that way, and then come out of it with a higher, better product and that we can call more to ADR potentially for and stuff. Yeah. Steph, you're dealing with brands all the time. Anybody talking like that? I mean, is some of these brand people going over saying maybe now's the time to just be this and do that?
Most of my contacts are on the marketing side, and pretty much everyone's gone dark. I don't know how many of them still have jobs at this point, but they've turned off everything. They've told you to go dark on social. They've turned off all marketing, and it's in a.
Wait, what? What?
Yeah, I wouldn't go dark on social.
People to go dark on social? That is the worst advice I've ever heard.
That was Marriott's advice to pull back. And they've turned off all of the meta search and turned off. Trying to
let's break it down, right?
Let's unpack that.
If we look at the travel journey, right? One small component of that is the stay itself. But every other component of the journey, the dreaming, the aspiration, the planning, the memories, the sharing, every other piece of the journey still exists and can be done really effectively on social right now. If you look at some of the Flip2 clients and some of the phenomenal campaigns they've pushed out there, it's really inspirational. People need hope and they need a dream now more than ever. And social is the platform to do that. So that is ludicrous.
I think the problem is they're probably concerned the social media so many times resolves in the hands of, an intern or an admin or a DOS that doesn't understand the communication messaging. So all they're pushing out is like, here's an isolation package, here's a staycation package, I don't think there was a lot of people weren't prepared robustly to have the right messaging out there. So, I mean, it can very quickly backlash, if you start communicating properly. I mean, it can turn on you fast. So I think that's where their concern was.
But that's messaging. If you're concerned about having, been furloughed and having no income and feeding your family and paying your mortgage, hey, buy this. It's not quite the right message.
Right.
So.
Right. But what about like when things get better, because they will, right? Here's a beach. Yeah. Here's a snow covered out. I mean,
absolutely.
The idea of the dreaming part is valid. Mm-hmm. And also, so Radisson, I was looking on LinkedIn and Twitter, Radisson is doing some really nice stuff, right? Corporate Radisson, they're helping all their hotels that are still open figure out how to make heart-shaped designs of lighted rooms in dark towers. Mm-hmm. So they've got these photographs of all their hotels from around the world, Moscow, Frankfurt, with especially that sit on the sides of the first, so you get that nice reflection in the image of those hearts. And that's really, that's nothing. That's really kind of a little nothing, right? It's just it's not selling, it's not anything. It's just this, here we are, sort of we're in this with the rest of you.
Well, and
we care.
2 points.
We want your money.
Correct. And two points to add to that. One, with regard to what Stuart said, people love shopping for travel. Like, that's actually a thing people legitimately enjoy. So there's an argument to be made. Again, if you message it correctly and it's not buy, right. There's something to be said for you're actually creating great experiences for people right now who have some time on their hands of, someday this will be a nice thing that we'll be able to do.
Right.
And then the second thing is that, and we've seen people make this mistake again and again and again. Hey, Ed, let's say, for sake of the argument, this all wraps up and everything's perfect. I'm just going to pick a date at random, on April 11th, Easter Sunday, somehow magically everything's better. And, suddenly now you have to start marketing.
I'm sorry.
I just picked that date out of thin air.
Reflex of action. I apologize.
There was no reason for that date whatsoever. I just picked it completely at random. But, let's just say that turns out to be the case. You can't start marketing on April 11th and hope that you will have people in your business on April 12th. The mistake that people are making when they go completely dark on these topics is that they assume we can start marketing when people are ready to travel again, and that will work out. And if it is, June 1st or July 1st or whatever, and you start marketing on that date, well, you've lost all of that month too. And that's putting yourself further behind the 8 ball on the recovery. And there is academic research and real world experience that we've all had that backs up exactly how true that is. You don't want to start the engine going the day people are ready to travel again, because you will already be behind.
Think about it from the perspective as if you're opening a new property that never existed before. You wouldn't wait until you opened the doors to start marketing.
That's exactly right.
Months in advance is the same principle right now.
Also remember that all these different ad platforms aren't held to anti-price gouging. So when they all of a sudden get flooded with budgets, you may be paying more per click for your keywords than you were prior. Whereas right now you could be paying a fraction of.
That's right. Yeah, my clients that are still running are crushing it, and they're able to get to keywords they would never have dreamed to get through before, because they can go super broad because there's zero competition. They're guaranteed the number 1 spot, and the ROI is tremendous as long as your messaging is right and you're targeting the right audience and the right dates with the right.
I heard Tim saying something about being anti-in-sync. No buy on the on the messaging.
Yes, that's the only reason I'm anti-in-sync. Otherwise, I'm learning
to be
all the
fair,
rules right now for my TikTok.
But to that point, I agree with Stuart in great deal. It's like I have hotels in markets that aren't closed, but hotels are closing in, that I am walking across miles of marketing voice territory that for pennies on the dollar, and the business that's still there, air crews that come off the plane, and every airport, their hotel is now closed, and the force majeure is closed, and they don't have content and they don't know where to stay. I got a place. People that are stuck between what they're doing, where they need to go, got a place. People that need to go over and be length of stay in the city for whatever reasons, I got a place. And we actually have, for the first time this week, for the past 5 days, have twice as many reservations as we've had cancellations. Now, it's a weird contrast to ever say, but in the world of, I'm pretty dang happy.
Right.
Yeah. And it's because I'm literally standing on top of the hill of best hotel inn, downtown inn, discover what, because it's 68 cents a click where it was $24 before. I think we actually have Greta on audio. Making it back. But Greta, is your audio working?
I am hoping my audio is working now.
Yeah, we should all pretend we couldn't hear it.
There we go.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
What?
I don't think we can hear it.
We'll just look at your small picture, but we'll know that you're there for it as well. If there's anything you want to chime in on, you just need sharp elbows with the group, because we'll just talk over it. So if you just want to pounce in, just pounce in.
I wanted to pounce in on what customers are doing, and we held webinars. Gosh, time has flown by now. Last week, and a lot of hotels are doing a great job with day rates for alternative office space. They're also doing a great job with, talking to their local hospitals and city, as you guys mentioned before, but really put themselves into a situation because those medical providers want to find a place to be safe for quarantining themselves. And so having packages that help them understand, they'll be safe and they'll be quarantined, and, talking about all that social media that you're discussing, those hotels that are coming back to us saying they're using those, those tools in their toolkit, they're actually seeing some nice effects. They're able to keep their doors open and keep staff. So it's not everybody, but they're at least able to keep their lights on, and that makes an asset owner very happy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, very true for them.
And actually, on that, in the comments or in the chat, Del Ross posted a great list, hotel effectiveness of deep cleaning techniques. And please, hoteliers, tell your customers what you're doing. Now, you don't have to go run big ads and pay-per-click on your cleaning methods, okay? But let them know. And the hospital are going to be very interested in that. That was, again, one of our recommendations. We said, go to the hospital, say, what should we be doing? Here's what we do to clean the rooms. Can we do stuff better? But this is a fantastic checklist. And again, if you can start reducing the stress and start creating trust that you're doing the right thing to protect them, that will be what really carries you along when this stuff starts clearing up.
So the converse of that is what drives me crazy, which I've posted in our chat room a couple times, which is basically upselling to a clean room, right?
Yeah.
So, that drives me.
I'm sorry. What?
All right, that's excellent.
So like an anti-COVID-19 room, right? Or what was it? There was a property in New York City that said, we'll put you on your own floor.
Oh, that was the Omni, yeah.
Oh, no, it was actually, I think it was Crown Plaza. But at any rate, I'm sure more than one of them has done it. So the other side of that coin, if I was a consumer, if I was a, potential guest, I'd say, so what are you doing with the rest of the rooms, right? And so
guaranteeing infection.
Oh no! Now wait.
Valin
has stumbled upon finally the use case for attribute-based selling. That's so the base level is bring your own sheets. Okay, we know that.
Yeah.
And then you can work up with.
Yeah, no, I have to echo back to what Stuart was talking about in the blind eye that Brand was totally flat-footed with this. All of us were flat-footed with this, but the Brand especially seems to be tone deaf on some things at this particular point by thinking of those terms, because now we have
I'm going to, Lauren, I know we always have this argument, but I'm going to push back on this.
Come on.
I think if you look at some of the things some brands have done, Best Western has done a remarkable job in terms of they are waiving tons of fees to owners over the next 2 months and things like that. They did
that quickly,
and they did it
like 3 weeks ago.
incredibly quickly. I'm trying to look up the things, but I mean, this was really, really well done and a model for for their franchisees, for their members, across the board. And I can't find the exact thing at the moment, but basically, all co-op marketing fees waived, all brand fees cut by 50%, all reservation fees cut by 50%.
That's tangible, but
not all the brands have been so generous.
By the way, I completely agree with that. I always push back on the blanket statement of the brands did a bad job. Some did, some didn't. Right?
Says next brand guy. Right?
I think it's just the next
brand guy. I mean, you're not wrong. Who works with independents today for a reason? Sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
Some of the hotels that I work with, have relationships with the brands, and where some of the marketing services have stopped. Said, okay, so what are we? We're still having to pay for account management services for these hotels, even if they're, and they're saying we're still working on how we can help. And, we're however many weeks in this crisis and we're still waiting for an answer. And we're like, well, if you can show value, then that's one thing, but, you got to work with us a little bit. So we're still awaiting responses.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
Del Watson, if you look, he's making some good points to all of this. Stuart, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm a member of a bunch of different rewards, programs with the brands, and I don't travel a lot in staying brands. I try to stay in independence, but I have, a Bonvoy card and a Hilton Honors card and things like that. It's been a stark contrast. I do have to tip my hat a little bit to Hilton. I think they've done a much better job than Marriott and a lot of others in terms of the flexibility they're communicating to folks and just instilling a little bit of empathy and confidence into people. Even if you booked a non-refundable prepaid rate, they're offering the flexibility to change that. And they've said if you still book one of those, they're still going to give you flexibility beyond this. So I would say some are doing a better job than others. And if you look at the type of headlines that are coming out, I think, this is my opinion. I'm not a brand expert, but I feel like Marriott's probably getting a little more bad press than most of the others. They were one of the first to cut jobs en masse. And just, I feel like they've made some missteps. They were very reactive quickly without being strategic about it. And I feel like folks like Best Western, folks like Hilton have probably done a little better job looking long term versus just focusing on that short term. Oh shit, what do we got to do right now?
But Arnie's video was stellar. I think that was.
Yeah, I mean they did PR it correctly, but you also have to realize they are substantially larger than most other brands. So to turn a ship requires, kind of knee-jerk reaction in order for it to come out to where they did the same thing another brand did, but it took them 3 weeks to get it through their system. So, I mean, listen, I'm usually one of the first ones to kind of poo-poo some of these brands on these things. But I will say they have an opportunity. And that opportunity is they can actually show their owners truly how valuable they are by negotiating on the behalf of their franchises with the U.S. government for the bailout. If they help their owners get bailed out and it's done through a conduit through the brand, that owner, you will never be able to tell that owner that brand isn't the best brand. Right. And so that is the opportunity they have. And honestly, they should be doing that.
That's right.
To Tim's point, I have an owner that has a Best Western and some of the other bigger brands, and he posted a video thanking Best Western for their flexibility, because there are a lot of owners that are super scared that, just like with the airlines, the bailouts being at the huge big companies, and how is it going to help the smaller owners? So are they going to help Marriott and Hilton versus help the smaller owners and management companies?
And I know that was a question that was brought into the query of what we could ask the gentleman earlier today. And I just didn't really want to put them into a position where they had to, because they have to speak over this because they got to talk to those same people in different rooms. And I didn't want to kind of hold them to the spot of what do you think this is going to go to? Who's going to benefit the most out of this process? But I mean, it is a valid question as the road goes forward as to who really is going to be helped the most from this process. Is it going to go from the top down? Is it going to go to the bottom up? Is it going to go to the people in the middle? All of that kind of stuff that is still a question mark, as to how it breaks down. But going back to the brand and what Stuart said and so forth about closing down the social, this is an amazing opportunity. And I think, Greta, you had this on one of your webinars, because I know I said something about it. Is the longhand conversations that can be had now. We're not looking at the 7-second rule as much as we used to. We're not talking about impact, boom, boom, and then the action button. We're talking about the ability to stretch out the conversation, improve the dialogue. Stuart, you hit it best. The aspirational, 80% of the people enjoy more the planning of the thing, somewhere 80%ish something, enjoy the planning of the adventure more so than the actual adventure itself. And so we have this wonderful chance to create storyboards and storylines and content. And really, that's the thing that we're focusing the most on is we're piling in mountains of content on the website, because whether you use paid advertisement or whether you use social content, it all has to point to some core source. And then we start talking about the schema and Google Zero and showing up for stuff. Nobody's touching it. They fired. I had 3 previous clients call me up. I'm not going to call them out by name, where they're like, "Hey, Lauren, what's up?" And I'm like, "Oh, hi." It's like, "Hey, listen, do you still have access to our Google account?" I'm like, "Yeah, you never pulled me off it." "Oh, thank God. I can't shut off the account," because their company fired the people that had access before they realized who they kicked out the door. And I'm like, really? Yeah. Brilliant.
Well, but first of all, I agree with what you just said completely. I also want to go back to what Valen said, because I think that messaging of what Radisson is doing in terms of, talking about how you're helping your local community, talking about how you're helping your staff, talking about, what you're doing to make this better for all the people around you is probably the best brand marketing you can do right now for the longer term, right? Because it's non-selling. It's just, hey, we're in this we're facing the same challenges you are. This is what we're doing to try to make a small dent in the universe in terms of making this better for the people around us. And I think that's going to pay. I don't think this. I'm confident that is going to pay dividends in the longer term.
Oh, yeah.
We knew from Katrina, and even before that especially after Katrina, those companies that were actually able to promote what they actually did and show customers what they were able to do. The social media aspect, though, I just want to go back to how important that is for people to tell their story in a way that's unique. Not always the silly part, but showing your general manager doing laundry in the back, showing what an honorable profession hospitality is. This is the day we get to really tell what it really feels like and how good it feels to be part of our industry. And those stories will help build a new group of people that want to be part of what we're doing because we're doing things that matter. So I think if these hotels can really step up to the plate, like I was so proud to be with Hilton and we took care of 1,200 Katrina victims, and we were able to turn them around into Section 8 housing in 7 days with sponsor families. And FEMA came knocking on the door the day we actually sent 10 people off that we couldn't help because they had health issues to the shelter, but we didn't have to send them off someplace. We took care of them. We housed them. We sheltered them. We found them sponsors, all the resources they could possibly want. And if you use creativity and innovation, and that's what hoteliers are, and our problem solving skills, we can really change and make a difference, but we have to be really creative. And it is a fabulous story to tell. But I think everyone's just, if they don't use their marketing opportunities today, they're missing out on those, to tell those stories, because everyone will be telling the same one and they'll all just they'll piggyback on each other.
One very, very, Greta, that's a great point. One very interesting thing I heard somebody say the other day, yesterday, I think it's been for one very long day this week. But one thing that I heard someone say was that, this situation, what is interesting about this situation is this is a hurricane that happened to hit the entire globe, and all the things that have been true in hurricane situations are kind of the same thing. Obviously, the length of recovery may be a lot longer, but I just thought it was an interesting way to think about it. As you, as a hotelier, think about your playbook for how you, pull through this. You can kind of lean on the lessons you've learned if you're in a hurricane zone. And if you're not, talk to your friends who have been through it, because the playbook is comparable with a longer duration.
Although I will say there's a one key difference because of it hitting the whole globe. If you actually look at most marketers' hurricane playbook, it's just shut off your targeting to those areas that would be offended by the messaging. That's actually the really tough position marketers are in right now. Like, the reason I wasn't on till just now is I was on a call with a hotel group that has to stay open. And they have to stay open partly because they're housing a substantial amount of doctors and nurses for a large government effort, but it's not enough to make the hotel profitable. So they're trying to walk that fine line of, we're here if you need us, but don't travel. I mean, is really what they're trying to do, but they need their occupancy to go up, or they're going to get, completely more damaged, by keeping the hotel open for these relief workers, because there just aren't enough relief workers to kind of hit the threshold. So marketers are being hit with something that I don't think any have seen, where there isn't a safe audience to target. So you have to actually be thoughtful on your messaging and realize that this messaging is going to be seen by people who are really in pain or scared. And so, that's unlike Hurricane Playbook. Because Hurricane Playbook, you just avoid the market that this would hurt.
Yep.
And you target to, everyone else less than, 50 miles away from them who are completely unaffected by it.
So empathy
there's-
is sort
there
of
is one-
the game, but empathy is a double-edged sword, right? Because for people who are really suffering, it doesn't matter, right?
No.
So empathy could be even a weapon if you just can't avoid it sometimes. I mean, even vendors like my company, empathy is we're reaching out to the customers who use our products to say, here's how you can use our products better, even in this really crappy time. You've got it. You paid for it. Let's get the most out of it. But it's but then sometimes like we're doing internal email campaigns for our customer base, and we got a couple of nastygrams from hotels saying we're closed.
Mm-hmm.
You should have known better. I'm like, well, sorry, right? I mean, we're doing our best here, so.
Right.
And it wasn't. We're not trying to offend you, and so it's. And there are people out there, like potential guests, who will say, "Why are you talking to me about, I don't know, snow-covered Alps or beaches in December when I've lost my job and I'm not going to get it back for this year?"
Right. Well, also too, there's the impact effect, the ripple effect of it. I'm talking to empty chairs now. I'm calling contacts at companies that no longer exist.
Right. Oh yeah.
Right.
And I don't know who else in the I have to actually go dig and research and start going through a list of people to say who is still in a chair.
Right.
And it is a shame in some senses, not to pick on Marriott, but just ownerships that made these choices where they just wholesale got rid of their staffing without the repercussions of who has the keys to what, who did what, and the people that are left behind that you are entrusted because they're your top people don't even know how to turn on their computer. They're just being over dramatic, but let alone know what to do with it. So these are the realities of I thought you didn't. No, I had such and such do that and such and. Well, why did I fire such and such when they're the one that did it? So there's a lot of truisms that are coming out of this of like, oh, so that's how things got done. But
and Lauren, all the companies that had really crappy security where the revenue manager used the same login and all the systems, they're fine, right? As opposed to
they're living their best life right now.
Two-factor authentication.
The ink blotter. Wait a minute, there's no ink blotter. Never mind.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right.
One weird little niche though that is going to come up, and I don't know. You guys are smarter than me on how to target this. There's going to be people who've had coronavirus and now they're fine, right? Because most of the cases are relatively mild. That's great. They're immune, right? So I predict there's going to be a big focus on how do you get those folks.
Yeah.
They think that's true. Yeah.
Nobody knows for sure yet.
Right.
What the
But
carrier
my thesis is there's going to be a lot of focus on how do you activate those people. If they can get some research, say, yep, this is it. Looks like immunity is good. Then how do you get those folks activated? And that might be a really interesting thing for the hotels, for volunteers to help. I don't know how you approach that. That is a hot potato.
Yeah. I think the coin phrase for that now is the resilient traveler. And that's what it is, being a defined category of how are we targeting the resilient traveler. And to Tim, you're exactly right. There is, and Dell pointed out too, there is no certainty that you can't be asymptomatic. There's no certainty that you can't be a carrier afterwards.
And none of us are medical professionals, and none of us are working on this from a medical perspective. Don't take our advice.
But the reality I will speak to, and then there's 3 categories of people right now: people that still have jobs, people that don't have jobs, and people who are uncertain about their jobs. And all 3 of those categories are not primed right now to go out and start traveling at the first opportunity, because those that still have jobs are working their butts off.
Dang, Lauren.
The ones that don't have a job are eager to find one, so they don't have the stability to want to go to travel, or at least not distant travel. And the third, those that are uncertain about their jobs are going to do everything they can to maintain the security that they do have while they still have it. The only people that have the opportunity to possibly exploit the travel opportunity afterwards, once we know more about how to travel from this new paradigm that we're in, are the people that, even though the stock market's bare and they lost a lot of money, is that they have the facilities to still go take advantage of the opportunities that pop out there. And that's not a very big audience.
So Lauren, I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead, Greta. I'll let you jump in there.
Sorry, I'm like waiting for just a brief pause.
I'm gonna steal Greta. Sorry.
No, it's okay. We have a series on preparing for the rebound, which is really focused on the individuals. And so I'd love for any of you to, contribute and add in there. But one of the things that's really important is a lot of folks are posting on social media, really not things that people should be seeing when they are in an interview process, because most people who were furloughed are going to have to re-interview for their job, right? It's not an automatic, you're going to get back, you're going to come back. And they're also going to have to be in interview mode. And we have to get people to understand what they're posting today, how they're spending their time while they're in quarantine. These are all stories they should be telling, but they really, really have to watch social media. Otherwise, people will determine the most important question that most companies will start asking right after all of this. Number one question that I would ask, and I've seen this with others, what did you do while you were in quarantine? And it will tell a huge story. It will tell a big story about how motivated you are. Are you a digger? Are you hungry to use your time wisely? Were you disciplined? It's going to be important how people promote how they spend their time. It's in resumes and focusing on your strengths and taking an assessment and really understanding, where do I want to go from here? It's a good moment to hit the pause button and figure out which direction you really want to go in, and train, cross-train, develop yourself, do all these things. But I think people can tell a wonderful, marvelous story. It's just whether or not they choose to. And people will hire people back, but they're probably going to be looking at who they hire back in a very different way. Can you wear multiple hats? Are you a quick learner? Are you disciplined? And are you going to develop yourself, or do I have to push on the gas?
Yep. Now, to the other side of that too, one other thing I'd kind of put out there is how you furloughed or laid off your employees is also going to affect you or help you when you recover. I've seen many stories of people being notified that they have been laid off or furloughed via email.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I know it's hard, and you're a leader who doesn't want to just handle the beatdown of every employee reacting to this. That is your job as a leader.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got on this, I want to give a lot of credit to Ted Ting, who I worked for at leading hotels for a bunch of years. And, we had to do a layoff during 2008, 2009. And one of the leaders in the organization, we were having a team leadership meeting about what had to happen and the folks we were going to have to say goodbye to and the like. And there was somebody who was in a relatively senior role who had been with the company for a long time, had never laid anyone off just because of the nature of the thing, and said, I hate to admit this. They said, but I'm shocked by how hard this is. And Ted's response was, good. It's supposed to be hard.
Yes.
You're telling people that they can't work here any longer. And if you ever reach a point where you can do this without feeling somewhat emotional about it, it's time for you to find something else to do with your time.
Yep.
And that has stayed with me for a long time, because he's exactly right.
Not to get too political. Yeah. The
Hey, look at
Apprentice
the time. I've
is
got
the
to
worst thing. I remember going to a take your child to work day. The take your child to work day. This was Tim and I work for the company. Right at the peak of that, and the number of kids running around screaming "You're fired" was insane. Right? Because no, and Tim actually no. One day I had to lay off.
I didn't work there in 2008, 2009.
Travel resources.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Tammy was spared. Tammy was spared because Tammy was great. And the other people were great too, was the problem. Right? But 30 people in a day, I mean, that changes you. Because you start looking at these people, and the ones who come back, the worst ones, are the ones who go, it's fine. Single mother, it's fine. I'll find something else. And you're like, no, punch me.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
This is the worst thing. You are the best person.
It's called survivor guilt.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I took a team of 70. I took a team of 72 people down to 6 after 9/11, working at Charles Schwab. And my worst particular day, I will tell this story. This was a little off topic, but I got emotional because there was somebody who was a dear friend of mine who I had to let go, and
Mhm.
they were consoling me, and I just felt like the worst human being in history. You know, like
Yep.
that is a
But
low point.
But I
you know?
also wanted to point that out because you may not realize, but they're all telling each other how they're being let go.
Oh, yeah, for
it's,
sure.
It's
Oh, yeah.
very public on
For
social
sure.
right now. And I've seen a mix of singing praises of wonderful leaders who really did go above and beyond to make sure their people who they had to furlough or had to lay off were okay. And then there are the ones who, yes, they emailed a team of people.
Group text.
Yeah. And
a Zoom meeting. Hey, glad you're
well,
all
at least a Zoom meeting. You're face to face. I mean,
no, their trip actions this week, which is a corporate travel startup, laid off 100 customer support people in a Zoom meeting where everyone was present.
At the same time.
Oh, that's efficient.
First people joined, got fired. Second people got rotated furlough. Third people got to stay.
Yeah.
The American Idol approach. We've separated you into groups. Who's going to make it
So
through?
they said, so there's an article. I mean, I'm not giving anything private away. It's in protocol. So, but you could see, so everybody was just like we are, right? You could see everybody and you could see people and everyone was muted. No questions, right? No, so muted from the top down.
You're lined up with blindfolds. Just get shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert, I'm afraid I'm going to have to let you go.
That's all right, Ed. That's all right, Ed. I believe by you continuing on, the world will be a better place. I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
Hey, by the way, folks, I really do. I wasn't just making a joke. I really do have to
Tim,
bounce.
We're letting Tim go.
And Lauren, the best thing that happened for you was Greta completely distracted me from telling everyone how you were completely wrong on the last thing you said. So, I mean, you should thank Greta. You should thank Tim.
Oh, no, that's
Put a
right.
pin in that. Let's come back to that.
Yeah.
Tim, where can people find you?
They can find me at timpeter.com, and I'm TC Peter on Twitter. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Stay well, stay healthy, stay indoors, wash your damn hands, and look forward to seeing you all a week from today.
See you, Tim.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
Tim.
Give the insights today. Thank you.
Hey, can I bring up one other point that Dell made in the comments?
Can I tell Lauren how he's wrong yet?
No, right after
We're
this.
getting really far away from like when Lauren said
has
something completely wrong.
Lauren has messaged me, said, come up with topics so Ed won't tell me what I'm wrong. So I'm really trying to help him out. Actually, Dell made the point on vacation that people are they're using all their vacation now, right? So his little posit was, hey, this may be tricky because people may not have vacation time. They're going to be cash strapped and that may, make a recovery even harder, which it's like, thanks for depressing us, Dell.
But here's the thing, and actually
reality, right?
that seeded what I wanted to kind of point out here is there are different audiences of people who will be in different situations. Do not make the mistake that Lauren was making and assume that your audience is only the people who can get on an airplane to come to you.
Not airplane, it's airplane.
Well, no, but the way you were painting the amount of effort and cost to go on a trip was as if it had.
How about the narrow casting of not looking at it as a funnel anymore as it is a segment?
Right. So while I understand that there are going to be entire groups, large groups of people who can't travel like they previously had intended, that does not necessarily mean they will not travel, because unlike ever before in human history, we have all been locked in rooms for an extended period of time. And I think you're going to find that even a small escape is going to be something people are looking for on the other side of this. You should be prepared to have yourself available to different audiences than maybe you had targeted before. Because yes, your audience may have that really deep impact to them because a large percentage of that specific type of audience happen to work in industry sectors that led them to strong financial hardship. But also understand there's going to be a lot of people who are on unemployment where unemployment is actually going to be okay compared to what it usually is. So don't just assume that if someone's on unemployment now that they're going to be completely cash strapped and not, spending a little bit differently, because unemployment's actually going to be probably what it should have always been as a as a safety net. Thanks to what's being argued right now in the House. But also anyone, if you are a family resort, like I need to get my kids out. Like I'm sorry, like my kids.
I agree with you in it all. In that, I'm trying to point out the fact that we think we're going through a tunnel and we're just going to turn the lights back on to the way it was when we come out the other end. And what I'm trying to say is, no, you just don't go back to turning on the campaigns you had before, to the people you thought before, to the reasons you had before. To your point, they're still going to want to do stuff, but they're going to do it in a whole new context,
and there's going to be a different way.
Segments.
Well, for example, right? So we're talking to a lot of our clients right now, preparing for at the appropriate time. But staycations are going to be a big thing. People are being stuck in their house. They're not going to want to travel because of fear. They want to stay close to home. But they just going to want a different scenery and the relaxation of a hotel. So having a package that targets the locals and also ask them to support local business, I think is a really good thing to be strategizing about right now, because your local market will be the first to come back, then your drive market, and then eventually business and group and flight and all that other stuff. But don't neglect your locals. They're going to want to travel or stay in hotels. They just might not want to go too far to do it initially.
Right. Well, and Lauren, I think what you're trying to create is it's not a funnel, it's not a tunnel. There's been a branch in the timeline, and there will be an alternative universe now. Moving
the Kelvin
forward.
timeline now.
There is no returning to the universe as it was before this event.
We can start doing crossovers, and there'll be evil Lauren will come. And
yes.
It'll be great.
On the evil side on this one, but
so it'd be evil Lauren and nice Ed. Is that it?
Yes. I own it.
Through the looking glass.
Hey, what Lewis is pointing out to is and this goes to alluding to what some question that Tim had brought up that was in the conversation. Our social norms are also changed. And it will affect us a lot longer than just the return to our ability to do things. And that's going to change how we go into any place. I mean, as we're talking about, it's will we go in and get our thermometer or our temperature checked? Will we have to ask questions of cleanliness standards? Will there be new protocols that have to be communicated in our messaging before people feel comfortable enough to travel with us? There's a whole lot of changes going on for people now realizing that until a virus vaccine of sorts gets fixed and or some sort of ways to handle this gets more normalized, people will be modifying their expectations in their travel process as well.
It's going to be a long time before I touch a breakfast buffet, any of those spoons again. Yeah,
or not soda that costs more than 3 times. I mean, I've been around with rocks for a whole week now.
I'm interested to see how the brands change their standards as relates to buffets, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sure. The Chinese restaurant market's in a peril right now because it's how many jello do we have in a bowl? How many? But anyways, so is there any particular other article, since we're getting close to a time of it, is there any other article that stood out that we want to make sure? I know we want to hit the boop and the rut roads are kind of self-evident, but I mean, is there any other articles that came out of Robert's list that we want to make not miss?
So
there's actually a comment I wanted to make on the guest that we had at the beginning of the show, because I forget who it was made the comment, but I think all 3 organizations are doing this. Typically they're all very gated communities, so you have to be a member to derive the benefit from the organization. But one of the things I've been really impressed about in the hospitality industry in general has been the generosity and the we're all in this together kind of fighting spirit that I've seen. So a lot of these organizations and entities that are out there trying to help their stakeholders are also opening that up. If you look at AAHOA, for example, all of what would have usually been gated content is now publicly available to everyone to benefit from.
Yeah.
So I would say hats off to everyone that's taken that approach, because we really are in this together, and the more we can help each other survive, I think the stronger we're going to come out of this.
Very true. Very good point for that. Shall we consider the boop, or I know we traditionally go for the rut row, but the whole show has been about a rut row.
Yes, let's boop it up. What was the boop today?
Well, no, the only thing is, the only reason I
Robert, let Valen talk.
So the only thing I wanted to talk about, or just briefly mention was the article in the Caterer about the OTA refunds.
Yeah.
So I have friends, like we all do, in various parts of the industry, and so one of the things that I had heard is part of this challenge is that the call centers that are maintained by all the big companies were hit hard by viruses. So
Absolutely.
part of this is that at least in one OTA's issue was that all their call center people were sick, and they ended up having to close their call center. So there was no way for them to manage the influx of calls coming in about their bookings that had, either non-refundable statuses or partially refundable. So the OTA just said, "Fuck it," right? We're just going to give it all back, and that's
did it Oprah style.
Well,
you get a refund, you get a refund, you get a refund.
And that's probably the best. That was probably the best strategy from a marketing and branding perspective as well, right? Saying, look, this is a bad situation. You aren't supposed to be traveling.
Right.
So, which is also, I think, why Expedia is doing the, the Captain Obvious, don't travel stuff. And they're like, hey, here's what we do. Now, the other side of that, though, is they're penalized. I think we mentioned last week, they're going to penalize the hotels who don't play nice with this too, because you're going to start losing points on your ranking when all this comes back. If you're like, no, we're going to hang on to all these people's money who's just lost their jobs. So, yeah.
That's why I think that's sort of these hotels are. I mean, I understand it can put hotel in a bad position, but on the other hand, like there's that empathy thing again, right? I mean, even big companies have thousands of sick employees that can't always make it to their jobs.
Yeah. Well, if the hotel is doing that to its guests, they certainly shouldn't get any benefits of any loan forgiveness or anything like that. It's like, hey, we got a contract. Let's have them deal with those terms, right? And I'm pretty sure those hoteliers are probably doing exactly the same, trying to take as much as they can on the other side as well, right? So, I just wanted to bring up. Oh, go ahead,
Stephanie. Yeah, that's definitely.
No, I asked Stuart if he needs to get tested. I heard him cough off screen, but he didn't want to.
Yeah, Stuart, you'll get swab, buddy.
I think I already had it. I had like a month of coughing and flu and all kinds of stuff. So,
I'm actually convinced that I had it right after the marketing conference.
Yeah, you probably got it from me because I think I had it.
Me too. I'm pretty sure I had it as well because it was the roughest, fastest I've been hit. By anything that I've ever been through. And it didn't test positive for the traditional strands of flu.
Same.
So, but back then we weren't testing for COVID-19.
Back then it was barely even a topic in the US, it wasn't, it wasn't something we really focused on.
3 weeks ago or 4 weeks
3 weeks ago we weren't testing. I got it from
2 months
Stuart. I got it from Stuart from Navis conference. So thanks Stuart.
Well, it's
Caring is
interesting
caring.
because 2 days before the marketing conference, I was visiting with a friend in New York. And so we were going around to all these different places in New York, and we were staying in Chinatown. So the chances that somebody came back from visiting relatives in China, I feel like is maybe even more extreme. So Stuart, I might be responsible for giving it to you. Who knows?
There you
You
go.
can blame it on me if you want.
All right, I'm blaming it on Lily then. Great.
Not the Chinese food, Lewis. Has nothing to do with actually being Chinese.
Now, I also do want to call out because it has been a while since I've seen Stuart, and he may not have bragged on this, but even with having the flu and being fairly sick, he completed a marathon.
Really?
Yeah. My wife was very much opposed to that, but I put the training in and I decided to do it. Yeah, I mean, it was stupid, but I did it. So. And I survived.
And you're alive to tell the tale.
Yeah, barely. That next week was rough. I thought I had pneumonia for a few days there, but I survived it for sure.
Yeah,
it probably did. Yeah.
Well, given the fact that a week ago we wouldn't even talk about hotels contributing their assets to being anywhere related to a coronavirus aspect of any sort, and then we started breaking that ground by talking about putting a coronavirus tab on your website to address the concerns that guests would have, to now talking this week about actually contributing your inventory as a place to support what's going on with coronavirus. I mean, that happened 7 days. I mean,
7 days.
7 days.
Listen, this week, I've spent a lot of my time showing our partners how leaning into talking about the reality of what's going on actually gets way higher engagement than they were ever getting before. We have multiple, and I've shared it with you guys that like we have multiple clients straight up leaning into, you should be home, you shouldn't be traveling, we are closed, so let's have fun, some fun together.
Yeah,
and those
my favorite I've seen. Yeah. I saw Discover Estonia put out a campaign, and the hashtag was "Stay the F Home."
They do great. Yeah. They are doing great stuff.
Yeah.
All right, I got 4 minutes.
All right, so let's do the boop.
The boop was really simple. I mean, the Four Seasons in New York, which is a what's their ADR? Probably maybe north of 1,000.
Is that the one on Billionaires Row?
It's on 57 East 57th. It's a nice address. Yeah, they closed down, no transient guests, but they are open for doctors and nurses and saying, come stay here, and they're going. And I'm guessing they might be getting pretty good occupancy. I don't know. The doctors, nurses going, that would be a good spot to stay.
If I'm a nurse, right? Four Seasons or like, I don't know, Javits, right? A bed in Javits. Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know. Javits is such an allure, you get to, No, but one
also said Accor is doing it in France. And then the other one, which I think is really, Airbnb hosts are providing housing to 100,000 responders, right? So Airbnb is doing it as well. So, and that's a lot of units.
Yeah, I think
to be fair, Airbnb isn't doing that, right? The host is doing that.
Correct. Well, but they're
Airbnb is facilitating, but the generosity is coming from the host, not from Airbnb.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But again, for Accor, that's probably mostly the owners of the hotels too, right? So.
But I don't want the hotel industry propping up Airbnb like we continue to do.
Absolutely. Louis made the comment back in the chat. Here, exactly the point.
Well, also too, keep in mind that where we are right now for somebody that comes up with a protocol of how to not endanger your staff in support of this. Oh no!
Who touched stuff?
Me again. It's
just
me.
Close your window if you have to leave. Don't touch stuff.
I was trying to.
Hold on, we're still here. We just got changed over to where we're
teeny tiny little.
There we go.
Okay, who's sharing their screen?
All good. All good.
So can we turn the training wheels protocol back on for balance?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know whether you know this, for anybody that was earlier on. So we had almost 56 people in the attendees list. And I sent specifically out to the speakers. And Cecil and Bob have already been with us a couple of times, but Chip hadn't been. I says, please, please, please do not touch the blinky red button in the upper right-hand corner. Guess who touches the red blinky button? So all 56 people, poof, disappear. And I'm like, crap. And I'm going.
Yeah, but you got like 11 still, so
Oh no, we got up to around when the gentleman ran. I think we're back up into the high 40s or something like that. But I think a lot of people just didn't know how to get back to it again, or didn't try. I don't know, but it was one of these whoosh. Now we had way crazy people on the other channel, so thank you. But to the end of this, because I know we're at that point. Valen, thank you very much for the time and the questions and the contribution and everything else. And knowing hopefully we still have some time, I hope that we get to see more and more as the weeks go on. If people want to know more about you or what you do, where can they find you?
So Twitter, I'm at Valen Perini, LinkedIn, same Valen Perini, and Norone is at www.norone.com.
Outstanding. Lily, I have to talk to you after this because we have to finish your podcast formulation thing. So we'll deal with that in a little bit. But if they want to know more about what it is you do and where they can find you, where can they find you?
You can find us at tcrmservices.com for all things day-to-day revenue management, and also at thinkupenterprises.com for assessments and strategic plans and system audits and all of those fun consulting services.
Now, Stephanie, before I get you off the hook, for people to know, I gave Stephanie a sub account to this platform, which she's the one that pushed the button, right? So she thought I gave her.
It wasn't Stephanie. It was me.
Oh, was it? Oh, it was you. Okay. But I give Stephanie access to the sub account. And what happened was we found out that you actually have to sign up for a free account before you get the access to the pro account. So Stephanie texted me back going, gee, thanks for nothing, because when you it just goes to buying the platform. She's like, I could have freaking done that myself. What we got all that.
Thank you.
But anyway, Stephanie, if they want to know you and what you do, where is it they can find you?
Well, I want to give one 2 cents. I saw that Moz is opening up their academy for free for the next for the end of the month. So anybody that I sent it to like 8 different people because I knew they got laid off. I'm like, if you need something to do, and then my other 2 cents is just like I've been, I've done some different mentoring for people that are younger and don't. I feel like this is the time to like reach out to them and like, I don't know, just help them through it because they take it very personally being laid off or furloughed or whatever. And I don't think it's necessarily a reflection of that. And that's how they see it. So if you know of people and you still are employed or still in an okay place, like think about those other people. But you can find me, Stephanie Spark Smith on LinkedIn or at CosgroveMarketing.com.
Outstanding. Mr. Cole, if they want to find you, sir, where can they find you?
rockcheetah.com or at Robert K. Cole. Or if you want to subscribe to the Rock Cheetah Hospitality Update, you just go to bit.ly/rockcheetah, all lowercase.
And for the record, I had mentioned that earlier in the show before you were there. Just so you know, I'm watching your back, buddy.
You did. Well, thank you very much.
Even though you don't do your homework and pick a freaking music track so we can make a podcast for you, but that's beside the point.
I told you. I've been reliving high school, so homework was not a priority back then.
Mr. Stuart Butler, for all things, and I owe you stuff. I owe you a list of stuff for a podcast and a couple other things.
You and Ed both. I'm waiting on your content, but that's okay.
Yeah. So,
and anyone else too that wants to come on the show, you're welcome to. Just all I ask is you put together some well thought out tips and tricks to help folks right now.
So now you all know why he's waiting on Lauren and I.
Yeah. As soon as they
as
they have a thought.
Yeah. That was probably too high a bar to ask for you gentlemen. But ladies, if you want to participate, I'm sure you can step up to the challenge.
Duly noted.
So you can find me at my house for the foreseeable future. You can also find us on fueltravel.com. We put together a resource page. Really, we did that because a lot of the resources that now are available weren't at the very beginning, so we jumped on it early. So you can go to fueltravel.com/resources, and we just aggregated every article and webinar and blog and video and podcast we could find that's related to how to deal with this crisis from a lot of different perspectives. And you can search it and filter it and vote up the ones that are more useful. So we've gotten a lot of good feedback on that. That's been helpful to a lot of folks. And we've also stepped up production of the podcast. So fueltravel.com/podcast. We put out 4 or 5 episodes now related specifically to COVID and preparedness and things you should be doing from a tactical perspective. We've had Lauren on a show, Tim on a show. We've done a few on our own. And we're going to be continuing to pump those out. And then we're also doing a little video series that's going to roll out starting today, where it's going to be how to do specific things. Because one of the things we've learned talking to folks is people are having to be responsible for jobs they don't know how to do because people have been let go and they find themselves given the keys to something, but they don't know how to drive it. So we're doing a lot of videos on how to add negative keywords to your PPC campaigns to avoid words like cancellation and COVID and things like that. So a lot of just little short videos that are going to help people navigate these crazy stormy waters. So fueltravel.com is where you can find all that stuff. And then I will say PSA, just like Stephanie said, calling younger people and trying to help them through this. I would also say too, if you have someone that's touched your life in the past that, maybe is alone, an older folk, one of the at-risk population, a lot of people right now is sitting in isolation and there's a lot of loneliness. So pick up the phone and call people that are in a situation where they need to hear a friendly voice. And if you can do that with a video chat, even better, because that'll bring a lot of joy to people's lives. So just take the time to think of others. Yeah, I've already called Robert and Lauren this past week. So
thank you, youngster. I appreciate it.
It means a lot to them. And don't forget your family members too that are all over the place because everyone's suffering, and bring a little joy to their lives. And try to keep smiling. That's the other thing I keep telling people. We'll get through it eventually.
Yep. Mr. Ed, sir.
Breaking news. The House of Representatives has signed the stimulus bill.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank goodness.
Some movement. Nice.
I don't know if they had to pull everybody back or not. I'm not sure.
I'm calling it now. The SBA's website's about to crash.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have to give kudos though, because I was on the SBA's website before they did their scheduled maintenance, and there was sort of a page by page application process, and it was a little bit broken, and they've really simplified that into a one page, print, sign, scan back to us. And I've never seen any sort of government related entity move that quickly before. So I was impressed at really the speed at which everything is being done right now, and grateful.
That's nice. Mr. Edser, you and what Flip2 does.
Well, if you want to find more about me, Edward St. Ange on social media, Cats right there if you just missed it. You can find out about Flip2 by going to flip.to. At some point, I'll probably be on Stuart's podcast if I can get my stuff together. You can have lunch with me and Lauren, every weekday except for Fridays because of this show. So that's actually been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So others should join that. I'll also say the Arizona chapter of HSMAI has a really cool coffee talk that that Holly had invited me to, and I've been doing that as well. Just a nice way to kind of just get to talk to people and hear what's going on, and things like that. So check those out too.
Thank you.
And Lauren, who is your daddy, and what does he do?
Yeah, we do the thing at noon. It's been kind of fun. We call it We Are Hospitality. It's a Facebook open group, and it's a link that there's no agenda or forum topics. Just, hey, who shows up, we talk. And we've had some fun talking to people from all over the place, just hearing stories.
It's basically the daily version of this show.
Or the daily version of this show. We say we have topics, but we never get to them. But no, it's a chance for everybody to pop in and just chat and talk and so forth. And it kind of echoes a little bit. There's another Facebook group that we're not we're a part of, but we're not. We just happen to join, and that is Family Hospitality Family, which is out there, which has a
great group.
And that is a great group where they're, just people. It's a chance to really just talk. It's kind of like, as you say, hurricane-esque in the sense that everybody's in their front yard meeting their neighbor all over again, or for the first time, because everybody's grilling the food that's thawing because nobody has power. It's like a chance to reconnect or connect with people that you just never had the time before to engage with. So, and to keep, to Stuart's point, the sanity of civility, of worrying about people that they have no communications with others and they can't be with others. So by all means, and anything that we're doing, anything I'm doing, if I can help in any way, this is not a business pitch. This is how can I help pitch. Just reach out to me, Lauren at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I'll answer any question and take any time I have for me. If I spend an hour doing nothing, I think I could have spent the hour helping. So at this point, it's not about business. It's about how can I contribute to, there's a big enough ocean for us, so don't worry about it. So with that in mind, this show and all previous 241 shows can be found at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. There you'll find links to and show notes and everything about the shows there. I would like to point out the fact that Lily's podcast will be starting soon, which is Hospitality Revenue Management. Robert's, God knows when, but it'll eventually be Hospitality by the Numbers whenever he figures to go over and pick a song that he likes to have in the background. We already have one running with Holly, who did not get to join us today, which is Hospitality Sales. That one's already rolled out and really good content. And I know that Liz is going to produce some really good content. Robert, I'm questionable about, but hey, everybody's got a slow puppy in the litter.
And I do just want to point out too, because my podcast.
I'm rethinking. There are a lot of podcasts.
All right, go down there. Go ahead, Lily.
My podcast should be up and live here shortly.
Go ahead.
And my first episode is going to be focused on how to actually do the math and determine whether or not you should close your hotel. So it should be a pretty exciting first revenue management topic for the podcast. But if you are struggling with that decision, keep an eye out for that. And that'll be up and live within just a couple business days.
Excellent. I'm sorry, Robert. Please go right ahead.
I would actually probably defer to people watching Jan Freitag of STR's video podcast, which is on Thursday afternoons. STR is doing some incredible stuff now. I think they've been freed up by their new ownership with CoStar. They are doing really good stuff. Their European one that Robin's doing out of their UK office is also outstanding. I think that's on Wednesdays, but really, really good information. And Jan's insights are not necessarily filtered by some of the, let's say, the constituencies who want things to get painted certain ways. So yeah, he's doing it straight. The other thing is he's going to be covering demand, which has never been something that STR has covered. They've always kept kind of supply and demand, the true supply and demand numbers in the back office. And at least he said he's going to come out and start sharing those, which will be very interesting because demand has gone from 21 million room nights to about 11. That was a 1 week change. And if you start doing that, you won't see these skewed numbers because of RevPARs and occupancies. Well, those don't count closed hotels, right? So that's going to be a very, very valuable podcast. So I would think I would just rather have a redirect doing a podcast to that. So that's my recommendation.
You could do a watch party.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Your commentary talking over them. So
That's
it'd be
right.
like this show.
Just like this show. Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry. I pick on you because I love you.
I know. Well, and as you, I know. And it was interesting. Yeah. Lauren was saying, "Welcome back to Valen," and we were all looking back forward to your return. But now you've been around a little. I don't know. Do you guys really think it?
Hey, anyways, with that in mind, thank you all very much, not only for those that are still with us, those that were joining us earlier, and those that joined us on all the platforms that we simulcast on. As always, and we have been doing this now, as we have said, for over 6.5 years, every Friday at 11:30 Eastern. Next week's show, 2:43, we have a guest lineup that's growing. Just so you all know, it seems that we are getting more and more attention from being able to bring what we've been always talking about and other people like who we had earlier on. So there are those, and I'm hoping that some of the larger group or businesses, we can consolidate some of their presidents or CEOs and see what they're doing about and how they're handling this as well. So we hear more of a solidarity voice from them as well. So
can we stop promising them that we're not going to come on and talk to them?
Yeah.
No, this was the apex of that for me, in the sense that now from now on, they've been on the show, so they have to join the show as we do the show.
Yep.
You know, this was a chance to, here we are, we got all three of them together, so let them have their opportunity to be just them. But from now on, as in, we won't be able to do 10 talking heads. We're going to have to limit how many talking heads, though, because we know how complex it is when we get talking, and there's 9 and stuff like that. So if it is, there has to be some decorum regardless, because we can't do this with them. It just won't last. So, but to have us on there to ask our own questions
could be fun, though.
No,
it'd be fun.
It'll be brief, is what it would be. It'll be brief.
It's great training for them, though, right?
Yeah, really would.
They got tough questions. Yeah.
So you could change the name of the show to Hospitality Battle Royale.
Yeah, right. Ooh. Okay. So
can we get a virtual octagon? Yeah.
No, octagon. No. If they want to come back with us and they let us know when they want to come back with us, we'll let them know. Yes, we'll have other co-hosts on this to ask their own questions, and they may ask what those questions may be ahead of time. They may ask, but we'll have some decorum as to how they get asked.
We'll follow the same rule we have followed with every guest who's come on this show. We will ask you questions, but we will be nice about it. We won't try to get you. Right. That's not our style.
Well, it's never been us. We've never been protagonistic about it, but just we do sharp elbows because we know each other comfortably enough to go back and forth to do this. They don't, and they have So the idea of it is that we're going to have some decorum as to how we approach the questions.
Could we ship them green cards?
I can't be decorum.
Can we ship them green cards to hold up when they want to talk?
No, I'm not going to go that. You know what I'm saying? It's just, we're dealing with a different combination of people.
I think we can handle it. I think it'll be fun.
All right, guys, I'm out.
Yeah, I got to go too.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Stuart,
everyone.
I sent you something. Just get it.
Is it good?
Get it done so we can get you guys moving.
You're now my favorite. Lauren's my second favorite. Actually, you're my third and fourth.
Oh no, I sent you a contract to sign. So sorry.
Okay.
Stay healthy, everybody. Stay in quarantine and wash your hands.
Right. And be kind to everybody.
Absolutely. Take care.